What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to episode number 256 of the VK Bros with Jason and Alex von Cannell. And just to start out the show, I just want to give you all a bit of a reminder. We are available on all of your favourite podcast apps. We are back on YouTube, so if that is more convenient for you, please subscribe there. But if you had to choose a video platform to subscribe on, please support the platform that supported us and free speech during the pandemic, which is our friends over at Rumble. If you don't have a Rumble account, it is free to sign up, so please head on over there, hit that subscribe button, like, share some comments below, and help us build the channel out. How are you going?
I'd say performance-wise, Rumble is up there in tech, comparable to YouTube. It just obviously doesn't have the same content library.
Yeah, they've come a long way too in the last few years.
Yeah.
They've put a lot of investment into it. Yeah.
I actually like some of the interface better on Rumble than YouTube's native app.
Yep, and also some people don't know this. Alex often spruiks the benefits of YouTube membership, particularly because you can play videos with your screen locked. So if you want to listen to things on YouTube, you can do that. Well, Rumble includes that for free, so that is just a standard feature. So yeah, you can subscribe on there if you just want to listen to us while you're in the car or something like that. You can play the Rumble clip with your screen locked, no video, and just listen to the audio.
I wanted to start off just quickly tell you about my week.
Sure.
Okay. So I had a great week last week. I had a long lunch Friday. I had a long lunch Saturday. I had a long lunch Sunday. That was like 7 hours drinking. Great weekend. Awesome weekend.
Oh.
But the problem is, like, you kind of pay for it in performance.
Oh yeah, especially at our ages, our advanced ages. You can see the greys in my beard now.
Yeah. So I go to the gym Monday. Monday was okay. For anyone that follows me on Instagram, everyone saw me push 140 kilos on the bench.
Yay.
And Tuesday comes around. I don't go to the gym on Tuesday. I thought I need a bit of a rest. Wednesday, I go to the auctions. It was a marathon, 7-hour auction. It was huge, 309 cars, massive auction.
Last auction of the financial year, big deal.
Literally finished essentially when I would usually go to the gym, so I didn't go to the gym that night. Went on the Thursday night to do my squats, and this is the last week before we go to testing, so we're doing very low reps but very big weights.
Yep.
I knew there was a problem when I first put like 140 kilos on the squat rack, and I sort of put it on the, sort of took the tension away. My back just went crack the whole way down, like, whoa. And I definitely was not where I thought I would be. And then this morning, being Friday, I went to deadlifts. Some of the slowest deadlifts that I'd done. And when I told my friend I was going to go on Thursday, he's like, man, it sounds like you needed a break. I probably should have just taken the day off. Yeah. Just to recoup.
Especially when you're lifting so heavy too.
Yeah.
Because what a lot of people don't realise about lifting, particularly heavy weights, is that you can have muscle fatigue, and that's the thing that everyone thinks about. But a big part of it is central nervous system fatigue. And if you've had like a massive day at the auctions, for example, that's not like that physically fatiguing, but it can actually strain your central nervous system. And then if you go and lift heavy weights, like one of the things that's interesting about using straps for things like deadlifts, did you know that one of the biggest things that fatigues your central nervous system is tightly gripping things?
Oh, interesting. No.
So like if you go and do heavy deadlifts without straps, which is what I do, because I don't really use straps, it's actually the gripping of the bar that fatigues your central nervous system more than lifting the weight itself.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's why a lot of really high performance lifters, they'll use straps, and people will call them bitches for using straps, but the real reason is because they want their central nervous system not to get over fatigued so they can train again the next day or the day after or whatever their schedule is.
Well, I know I've told you, but I don't know if I've said it on the show. I'm now using the belt, like the weight belt, for squats and for deadlifts.
Yep.
And I don't think it does anything for the lift as such, but I can actually use my legs the next day. Works the next day, which it didn't do before when I was. And people hate this when I tell them this, but when I was doing big deadlifts before, the day after, I could barely lift my leg to put it into my pants, to put pants on.
Yeah, right.
And that was like every time.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas now using the belt and just having everything strapped in, and you can definitely feel it. Like as soon as you get tension on it, your whole core just wants to like splay out, and it just keeps everything locked in.
Yeah.
And I am a big fan, and I don't care. Like someone put in the comments because I put my 150 lift on there. Like, oh, why are you using belt at 150? Dude, I'd use it at 20 if it gives me the ability to move the next day.
Yeah, and look, the thing is, you do have to train smarter as you age as well. Like, your body doesn't bounce back as quickly, and the number one worst thing you can do for your physical health when you're training is get injured. So, whatever you need to do it safely, do that.
Now, in my off time at home, and this is what I wanted to start the conversation with, because I think this is very, very, very interesting. And we maybe have dabbled in the past, but because I'm going through it again, I can see it with a little bit more clarity now. I'm a big UFO guy, right? I consume heaps of UFO content. I've been hoaxed on this show before.
Yeah.
Right? I want to believe. So I thought I would watch the X-Files again.
Right.
Now, what I did was I actually got ChatGPT to list out the episodes that only have the alien story arc.
Right.
Because X-Files is about... So the X-Files being the alien program, the show X-Files is about Dana and Mulder.
And Scully, yep.
That's Dana Scully.
Oh, sorry, yep.
Come on, man. Come on. Fox Mulder.
Come on, bro.
They're FBI agents, so they solve a whole bunch of other crimes as well. But I specifically... Because I've been through it a bunch of times before...
Oh, when was the X-Files released?
1993.
Right, so that was back in the good old days when the FBI solved crimes rather than did crimes.
Facilitated crimes.
Yeah.
So, but this is what is really, really interesting to me watching it again now. So we're 30 years on, okay? The episodes that they're showing, only the alien character arc, are all being announced now as being true.
Right.
So, for example, the episode I watched might have been in the second season. There's about 3 to 5 alien episodes per season. And there's like 25 or 26 episodes per season. It was an episode about the trucks that have picked up the crashed craft,
right,
and transporting it, and the levels at which the government goes to hiding the evidence of these moving. But there's also all this, it draws a lot of attention because apparently whenever they're moving these craft, there's way more alien sightings. So the people on the ground don't know that the craft's being moved, but there's all these reports of like UFOs, UFO sightings, and the UFO sightings seem to follow the craft.
Yeah. Well, if someone stole your bike, you'd go and try and find it, wouldn't you?
Sure. But this episode came out in 1994. Well, a whistleblower has only just come out in the last 4 months talking about how he was part of the retrieval team that was doing this stuff. So 30 years on, it's now coming out that these things were happening. So either Chris Carter, the maker of X-Files, he's definitely an enthusiast, because essentially all the episodes that I've watched so far, I've known about as part of modern day alien disclosure that's happening now. And Congress in America is now trying to put Nancy Mace, who's like one of my favorite, Congress people. She's trying to get it out. She's trying to she's really pushing to say, hey,
tell the people what you know.
Yeah, and mainly the excuse they're trying to use is because people have been injured that have come into contact with these things. And we're like, so we've got service personnel that have been injured in the line of duty.
Right.
They're getting left out in the dirt. No one's believing them. They're not allowed to talk about it. And and also Congress has the right.
Are we still talking about UFO retrieval, or are we talking about the vaccine program that they used on the military?
Well, these injuries don't. It doesn't give you myocarditis.
That would be so like US Congress, is just they have a raft of myocarditis, blood clots, heart attacks, and be like, yeah guys, every single one of these military personnel touched an alien spacecraft that they're retrieving. That's the reason why they got injured.
Well, Jason, let's not get crazy now, because if you watch the second X-Files movie, which I think sort of fits in with season 5 of the show,
right?
They're talking about creating a disease that can go around, so they have to inoculate everyone.
Right.
And that has alien hybrid properties in it, and it's the next evolution of the human species, because the government does a deal with the aliens.
It's interesting that you brought this up, because I think this is such an interesting concept when it comes to predictive programming via media. Because this just came up recently about the US strikes on Iran. Did you hear about...
Yes, dude. Yeah. I know about this. I mean, you sent it to the group. I watched that whole video. It's wild. So, yeah, you should explain it.
Yeah. So, basically, what we're talking about is when it comes to predictive programming. The real hardcore tinfoil hatters have been saying for years that the elites who run the world are all Satanists, and a lot of this has religious aspects to it, and part of them being able to do these dastardly deeds to the citizenry without fear of going to hell at the end of things is they have to tell us what they're going to do before they do it, so then their souls can be clear, because they're like, we warned you, we told you this thing was coming. And one of the most really good recent examples of that was, when did the movie Contagion come out?
Ooh, I'll check it while
you check it. So Contagion was essentially a movie about a global pandemic that swept the world, killed stacks of people, and then obviously we then experienced COVID-19. And these sorts of things have happened... 2011, yeah, okay. And these sorts of things have happened many times before. And another example of this happened very recently with the new Top Gun Maverick movie. Now, have you seen the movie? Because I haven't actually watched it.
I've seen the movie. Yeah, I've seen it twice.
Okay. So I caught a clip from Mike Benz the other day, and that's what Alex is referring to that I sent into the group chat, where he does a detailed analysis of essentially how what just happened between the US, Israel, and Iran literally mirrors the plot of Top Gun Maverick, but even down to some very specific points. Like, I remember when that movie came out, one of the things that was spoken about and around it was that they never actually explained who the enemy was.
Yeah. And I think the assumption was made like, oh, we don't want to offend anyone. Like, we don't want to make it like an 80s and 90s movie where it was against the Middle East, and we don't want to make it, or
the Russians, or the Germans.
Nazis, or whatever. Yeah.
But it was some nondescript country in the Middle East, is essentially what was referenced. But he picked up on a really good part too, because when it's like near the beginning of the movie and they're talking about the plan, they basically say they have to essentially take out a nuclear facility that's hidden in the mountains of a nondescript country in the Middle East on behalf of our allies in the region.
Yeah. Which is weird. I remember when I heard that part, when I watched it live, I was like, it's different. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Usually it's like, America.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was literally the US military saying we need to do this on behalf of our allies in the region. Now, if any of you have been paying attention, the US has one ally in the region, which just happens to be Israel. But yeah, it's wild. It's wild. Hey, like that clip that Mike Benz breaks it down. I'll put a link to it in the show notes so you guys can go and watch it.
It wasn't to blow up a nuclear weapons facility. It was to blow up a nuclear enrichment
facility that was being used for civilian enrichment.
And even the terrain looks really, really close.
Yeah.
So could it be two things? Is it the demonic thing they have to, I don't know, some stupid rule where they have to say it, or is it, which this is what I think it is. The beauty of it is in the future, when you refer back to this thing happening in Iran in real life, someone will say, "No, that was Top Gun, you idiot."
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It's literally like hiding the truth in plain sight, and it muddies the waters because certain key aspects of the situation, you might think you remember it correctly from the situation itself, and then someone goes, "No, actually, that was from Maverick, you idiot." And then you go, "Oh, maybe I was wrong about that whole thing."
But think about it from an association point of view. The layman on the street is going to associate a Tom Cruise movie much higher than a news, propaganda thing that really no one's that invested in anymore.
Yeah.
So and that's why I find this X-Files thing so interesting. Is that, and look, less people care about the alien thing, but let's not forget that Chris Carter, the maker of X-Files, also made The Lone Gunman, and let's not forget that the first episode was due to come out in 2001, and the plot was that the American government was going to use drone technology to take over the controls of a civilian aircraft and fly it into the World Trade Center. They couldn't release it that year because that happened.
Yeah.
September 11th.
Would have been a bit awkward if they released it. It's also, again, like your question is the interesting one. It's what is it? Like, why do these things happen? Like, what's the real reason? Is it the satanic predictive programming, keep your soul clean thing, or is it the fact that there's no new stories anymore? Like, look at Hollywood. Hollywood's just releasing remakes of everything at the moment.
Well, I would say that the reality is more interesting than fiction.
I totally agree. It's one of the things that my wife hates about the last 5 years of the pandemic and everything, is that I find it really difficult to get into new fictional dramas now because it's so much less interesting than what's actually happening in the real world. And that, I believe, is by design too. You basically try to draw people's attention into these fake stories that are written instead of actually having people look at, like, I've spoken about it on the show before, but Underbelly. I find it so interesting, like the TV series, Australian TV series Underbelly. It was one of the most popular Australian TV series ever released. And it's literally about real stories of government, police, corruption, including with the mobsters and everything like that. Real stories of that stuff happening in Australia. And then when you try to tell regular punters off the street that those things are still happening in Australia, they go, "You're a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist."
Yeah, there's actually another element to this that I had a conversation with someone during the week. So he asked me if I'd seen this Netflix documentary about these horrific murders. I said to him, I said, "Look, I've got to be honest. I actually don't enjoy them.
Yeah.
I'm not a big true crime guy.
Because they're not women, mate.
Chicks love it.
Chicks dig it.
Love it, right? The more heinous the crime, the more they're in.
Yeah.
And the other thing I said too is, I'm not sure how I feel about it from a moral standpoint, in that we are now essentially glorifying horrific events, where I've heard people say, "I can't wait to see the Netflix documentary about that."
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, okay, so now...
Like Luigi Mangione will be the next one, right?
Yeah. But are we like... Is that bloodlusting? Are we any different to watching the gladiators...
We're not.
...decapitate people in front of us? Like, I don't like what that... Not the message, but I just don't like how there's an appeal there for heinous things to happen and it to be framed in an entertaining way.
But it even goes against the woke basis of society at the moment. Like, the wokies basically say, we don't want regular people to be exploited by corporations for profit, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll take the most heinous of crimes, for example, like, women being raped and murdered, and we'll allow a movie studio to exploit that situation for profit.
Yeah.
It is pretty gross.
So, I mean, and going back to the, I think reality, I agree with you. I think that, talking about COVID, people want to go and see a documentary about a government conspiracy. And when you're living in it, you wouldn't listen to us.
Yeah, totally.
Like, Like we've seen all these movies before.
That's
like
right.
we know that it happens, but
Yeah.
it only is real in your mind once Netflix does a show about it.
That's right. That's right. And it's,
Which will happen, no doubt.
Of course.
One will come out, and then you'll appreciate. Oh yeah, I was there for that. Mm.
Yeah, and, oh, I can't believe the government did that at the time.
Yeah.
Like, if only I knew.
Yeah, and they definitely are not doing it right now with something else.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, even, and I'll bring her up again, but I mentioned on the show last week, Erin Molan. Did I talk about Erin Molan last week?
Yeah.
So, anyway, I just couldn't help myself because every day I get pushed her posts about Israel, and so she put up another one yesterday, and it's her speaking, but I'll just say the little blurb at the top. It says, "You don't have to choose between Muslims and Jews. You don't have to, in quotes, stand with Israel, in brackets, they don't need you, in case you couldn't tell. Just don't stand with terrorists. It's not complex. Shrug."
Yeah.
And I just commented below it, and I said, most people just think it's strange that you literally met with the head of the IDF International Social Media Department, and every day since you've been posting emotional calls to action for Israel.
Yeah.
Like, it's not hard, but this is how all of these psyops work. And I just feel like a lot of these movies and the X-Files and everything like that, I think you're right. I think the majority of it is literally just to muddy the water of public discussion around really important subjects, because the majority of people are going to consume and have more of an understanding of the TV series than they are of the real life thing that happens.
Yeah, and then I want to, do they just nudge you slightly?
Absolutely.
Like, does the TV series just slightly nudge you? Or is it even as little as the ability to discount it by saying, nah, it's a movie? And I've had people say it to me before, and I can't remember the exact movie or the exact... They're like, oh, that's the plot line from blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, that was based off a real thing.
That's right, yeah.
And just how it's obviously a very powerful way to... It's a very powerful way to hide real heinous things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hide in plain sight.
Yeah, and this Top Gun Maverick thing is the wildest. Like that.
Yeah. You should watch it. I'll put a link to it in the show notes for sure. It's definitely worth a watch. But like on this vein too, I put a post up yesterday on X, then I put on Instagram as well. And this, I believe, is sort of linked. So it said, the for or against binary that people subscribe to is the problem. For example, are you for or against vaccines? Well, how about vaccines properly tested for safety and efficacy? Are you renewables or nuclear? How about both as part of an efficient energy mix? Usually the magic is in the middle.
Yeah.
So on that note, because I was thinking about it, so like with COVID and with vaccines is one of these things where everyone is either for or against. And a lot of this discourse, and this will, like, you know, one of the stories we covered last week is about how RFK Jr. just fired every member of the ACIP committee and replaced them with new people. And all over X all week, people have been going off about it, saying he's dangerous and etc., etc., etc. And I was thinking about it, and I went on GPT before, because think about the types of people who are the most pro-vax, at least over the last 5 years. They're typically liberals, right?
Yeah.
And what do liberals want in everyday life? Like, most liberals are talking...
Free stuff.
Well, yeah, yep. But they want that latest stuff too, right? I want the latest iPhone. I want the best laptop. I want, you know, the new Tesla, right? All of this updated technology. And they keep talking about how technology will literally save the world and set us free and all of those things. So I thought about it and I was like, okay, the real, like, sweet spot for vaccines, in my opinion, is vaccines which are safe and effective, that have been properly tested for safety. And as Alex and I have covered on the show recently, the big swerve that the vaccine industry has pulled on people, number one, vaccines having zero liability, that's a big issue. But number two, when they tell you they've been safety tested, the placebo is not a saline solution.
Yeah.
What the swerve is they test this vaccine against a previously approved vaccine, which means you're testing something with adjuvants in it against something else that also has adjuvants in it. And you're noting down the differences between the responses to the two different things. So if the response to them is the same inflammatory markers, for example, well, that's not statistically significant because the new vaccine just had the same response as the older vaccine, which is previously approved, which is widely deemed as safe.
It's a terrible decision tree. So if you were to build a decision tree between like yes or no or pro or con, but does a vaccine work? Okay, test it against no vaccine and vaccine. If the answer is yes, move to yes, right? Yeah. But we haven't asked that question. So now we're in the yes, they work, even though we've never done that original test.
Yep.
And then we're like, okay, is this one better than this one? Yes. Okay, but you haven't moved over to... You still don't know whether that one is better than not having it at all.
That's right.
Because you're not even looking for it. So now the whole decision tree moves over into a state where you're actually moving further and further away from the truth.
Yeah, and it's like saying how healthy is Coke Zero, and then you test Coke Zero against Coke with sugar, and then those are the results you go off, instead of having Coke, Coke Zero, and water as your control. So anyway, I went and I asked ChatGPT, so considering the list of childhood vaccines on the US, the recommended schedule, what year were these vaccines released? So the inactivated poliovirus vaccine was first released in 1955. Mm-hmm. Diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, 1949. Measles, mumps, rubella, 1971. Hepatitis B, 1981. So on and so forth. So here's my thing. How much has technology advanced in every other part of our lives since 1970 even? Mm. Right? Basically, the majority of the Western world is completely unrecognizable technology-wise compared to 1970, let alone 1949. So why do these people who demand the latest, greatest of everything else in their lives not think, well, hey, maybe we could actually update these to make them safer and more effective? Like, why do you just hold on to these old bits of technology like with such gusto?
Yeah, but they're doing it because of today's argument. So you had to pick, so they feel the need to pick a side depending on the argument. Yeah. The argument has been made up by the side they don't like, therefore they're always going to choose the other side of that.
Which is why I made that post that the binary of us versus them is the problem, because the magic is in the middle. Like, I saw Peter Fitzsimmons, the fucking gay pirate from Australia, who fancies himself a journalist and yet doesn't seem to have journalistic interest in anything other than what the government says is correct, has been posting all week about how dangerous RFK Jr. is and how much he trusts Fauci. And I'm like, I comment on one of his things and I said, okay, the TGA who approved and recommended the COVID vaccines for children under 18 for 3 years has just quietly reversed their decision on that. Are they anti-vaxxers?
Yeah.
And obviously, no response, because they're not interested in the truth or, you know, actually moving forward in the right direction as a society. All they're interested in is their team versus your team. And you're either for this thing 100% or you must be on the other team. It was the same as I think I said last week on the show. I can't remember. I've had too many group chats going this week. But that whole... I got pushed a meme and it says, when your Instagram algorithm notices that you've started liking anti-Israeli content, so it starts pushing you pro-Hamas content, and it's Peter Griffin going, whoa, 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 whoa.
Well, okay, I don't know if you noticed the message I put in our chat. I think Meta's playing with us at the moment.
Okay.
I have noticed in the last week or two, a lot of people have been sending me death clips.
Interesting.
So I don't enjoy watching people die on
Me neither.
Right?
Not into it.
I did it when the internet first came out.
Oh, yeah.
I was big on it back then.
Yeah.
Right? I don't like it
What was that website? Oh, no, don't say it.
Rotten.com.
Yeah.
E-fucked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that was old Internet 1.0 me.
By the way,
like
just as on an aside, those websites won't be blocked for kids under 16 with the social media ban
but
from.
YouTube will.
Yeah.
So, I've noticed that. So the fact that they must be receiving that stuff, and these people that I've had it from 3 separate occasions. These people don't usually do it.
Right.
But all of a sudden, they must be getting fed it.
Yep.
And therefore feeding it around. And I was like, hey, don't send me dying people. Like I'd never asked for that. I don't want that. Like I don't like that. And then I thought about it. I was like, why has it all of a sudden happened? 3 completely separate death events.
Yeah, because I want to normalize death so that we don't have that adverse reaction to seeing death on our TV screens.
Could be that, or taking your eye off the ball, thinking, like trying to enforce and think about what, and we spoke about last week, what Anonymous came out and said, that there's going to be some more
disclosure.
Well, no, not disclosure, that there's going to be a terrorist event done in the West.
Yeah,
it's a Black Flag operation, and is this part of the tune-up to get
priming?
People?
Psychological
absolutely,
priming. Yeah,
absolutely. And like I said, these people aren't deaf people. They're not. They're not for the weird group. They're just people I interact with good friends of mine, but all of a sudden must be being fed. And I'm sure they're not sending me everything. They're only sending me some stuff that they think I'll like, which I don't.
Yeah.
I don't like it. But I just found it really interesting. And we know for a fact, and we've spoken about the show, it happened years and years and years ago, Meta runs campaigns, essentially.
Absolutely.
Like research campaigns on its users.
Yeah.
They've picked different places. Australia was subject to this before. They said, they separated the cohorts and they said, we're going to give positive things to these people, we're going to give negative things to these people, and we're going to see what happens.
Dude, I don't know if you heard about this recently, and I don't have the article, but you'll be able to look it up and find it, as in the audience. You don't need to do it now. Meta got caught out fairly recently because they had part of their algorithm on Instagram and Facebook, which it sensed when young girls, like teenage girls, deleted selfies off their social media.
Yes.
And then it pushed them advertising about like beauty stuff, cosmetic surgery stuff, all that sort of shit. So you're right. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's literally their business model. It's engineering behaviors to profit their advertisers. Like that's why people advertise on Meta in the first place, because they get their advertisements pushed to people that are most likely to buy their products. It's literally the model.
I don't know how effective it would be to show, some horrific, like I got sent one, God blew up in a landmine. I don't need to see that stuff.
Oh, was that the guy who walked out to kick over the Palestinian flag?
So you saw it?
Yeah, I got sent that too.
It?
Yeah.
Does that person usually send you that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
I was not surprised from this particular person. No.
Okay.
And look, I can say I don't like that stuff either. I don't.
Yeah. So stop sending the stuff to the BK Bros. We don't like it. Like I said, there's enough. Like we know it's happening. It's not, and this is not me absolving myself of any. Like I know it's happening for real. I don't need to be. I don't want to be triggered by those things to make an irrational decision about it, because it's horrific stuff.
Yeah.
But I also know once you see that thing, you know that there's just as horrific thing on the other side of that thing.
Yeah, and
so I know that. I don't need to see it.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's where we are self-reflective enough to understand that that's probably what the goal of these things is. Whereas unfortunately, the majority of people who will come across that content for the first time, they won't realize that it's literally part of priming them psychologically for a certain thing. I mean, Look, we grew up in a time. How much did the authorities talk back in the day about how violent video games desensitize children to violent acts? And they basically tried to blame a whole bunch of like violent youth crime on them playing violent video games. Well, the same effect would happen on today when it comes to seeing reels on social media or videos or whatever. You become desensitized to death. So then that way, and again, like, not to keep harping on about it, but it's relevant, When Israel comes out and pushes these stories via Aaron Molan about a 7-year-old leukemia patient from Israel that happened to die in a bombing, and makes it out like this is one of the worst things to ever happen, which it is. I'm not going to say it's not. But then at the same time, they're kind of not talking about... I got updated numbers. 55,000 people are dead in Palestine now since that kicked off. So they'll talk about... And the emotional call to action is about this girl who died because Iran bombed them. But don't worry about the 55,000 people that we've killed in our next door neighbours in Palestine, right? Yeah. But if you can desensitize people to death by showing it to them on a regular basis, and I'm telling you right now, as human beings, we ain't supposed to see people dying all the time.
Yeah.
We're not. Like, that's not good for your brain. It's not good for your psyche, for your emotional stability. It's not good for you. So if you find yourself being fed these videos, I'd be really interested, if you guys can leave it in the comments below, have any of you been pushed that sort of violent, death-related content that you wouldn't normally see? Because I've had discussions many times about how, particularly, I probably spent, as far as social media goes, I spend the most time on Instagram and X. And Instagram is more... my X algorithm usually sends me things that are relevant to the things that I discuss. So I'd say it's pretty good. My Instagram search algo, though, every now and then, I'll curate my algo, curate it, and then every now and then I just open it up and it's just all tits.
Yeah.
Right? And
we've said it on the show before.
Yeah.
If you leave my business one that I rarely use, the For You page is essentially porn.
Yeah. Because I think what it does is it goes...
And then if you're off it for a week,
yep,
it starts to come back in.
That's right. And because I think the algo, built into it, it goes, okay, these accounts are owned by mid-30-year-old men. What typically gets the most engagement from mid-30-year-old men? It's tits. So I'm going to feed them tits.
Girls is the same. Because I had this... I was sitting... we played the game. She's like, I bet you your For You page is just full of sluts. And I said, I bet you yours is. Pulled it out, mine was just watches, cars, motorbikes.
Right.
And then hers, sluts.
Yeah. Well, again, that gets fed to them because Instagram wants you feeling like you're not good enough, ladies, so that it can sell you advertising about cosmetic surgeries and beauty products.
Yeah.
Like, that's all part of it too.
Let's move to... Okay, we should talk about Iran.
Yeah.
We should talk about what we spoke about last week, because something happened... I predicted it on the show last week because I was disappointed in Trump.
Yep.
Right? For starting this war. But I said the one way that he could redeem himself is if he turned on Israel. Mm-hmm. I want to show the clip.
Sure. Bring it up.
This is a famous clip. Yeah, everyone's probably heard it, but if you haven't, I know some people exclusively wait to see our show before they get the news. So this is a clip. This is just after... So essentially, the bombings have happened... They announced a ceasefire with a staggered time frame for Iran and Israel, which is a bit bad. Mm-hmm. And then after he calls the ceasefire, they just keep bombing each other.
I also just want to make the comment too. This is one of the unfortunate pitfalls of the fact that we record our show usually on a Friday.
Yeah.
Because all war-related activities tend to happen over the weekend, and I discussed this with Alex in our group chat during the week. I think it is by design. Anything that the US is involved with when it comes to global conflicts, I think they deliberately launch stuff on the weekends to try to give the stock market a day or two extra to see what's going to happen, rather than have people have knee-jerk reactions and pull all their money out of the markets. I think it's literally
the other way around. It's the other way around. It's giving the politicians the ability to load up on the stock on the Friday, have all the news over the weekend, let that gather, so all the money goes in on the Monday, and the dumb money can be taken out by the stock.
Got it. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the clip.
Israel says that Iran violated the peace agreement, the ceasefire agreement. Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning, because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
I heard a comedian talk about the walk-off because that helicopter is not started yet. So, but he's committed to the walk-off.
Yeah.
So he has to walk in that direction. So even if he has to just do 2 laps of this garden and come back.
I reckon that there is a policy that they're not allowed to start helicopters before he walks underneath them, so it doesn't blow his toupee off.
Oh, the heck! Good point.
Yeah,
but
just for the record, first ever F-bomb dropped by a US president on film in history. Just so you're aware.
Oh, is it true? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
First ever live F-bomb.
And he meant it too, because he's not a cussy guy.
No, he does participate in some locker room talk.
Sure.
But he's composed when he needs to be. Yeah.
But he leans in and he really hit it. So now it depends on what happens now. Like, but the fact that's the first anti-Israel sentiment that's essentially ever been said by a US president.
Yeah, pretty much.
So let's see. Let's see what happens from now. Now, I've got a bit of an inside line on it. This is not natural. This is not my idea.
Okay.
I've now got a new friend that's much deeper than what I am.
Right.
So I go to him when these events happen, and I'll ask him what does he think. And he's like, oh, it's easy. It's just this, and he's going to do that, and it's going to flip, and da-da-da-da-da-da. So he was the one that gave me that inside line, and it's since happened.
Okay. Interesting.
But obviously it hasn't... we have to see what the actual outcome is. Like, for example, if he goes in now and says, well, I'm not trusting anything that Netanyahu is saying, and therefore I'm going to do this, and this, or I'm going to cut off funding, or like Gaza, that's done, like, tomorrow. If that's not done tomorrow, like, this is going to happen. And this he could use as the best excuse. And if he does it, Trump's a hero. If he doesn't, he's just like the rest of them. Yeah,
and don't you find it interesting where when you analyse all of these conflicts, so even including like Russia, Ukraine and everything like that, so go back to Russia, Ukraine. Zelensky was literally elected on a peace platform. He said he didn't want to have any wars, didn't want to be involved in any wars. And he gets elected and he becomes the US's puppet to essentially ensure that a war with Russia begins. When people speak about Iran and the Ayatollah, they talk about how essentially they just want to start wars all the time, and they are the head of the octopus and funding terrorist activities all throughout the region and etc. But the things that like everyone always leaves out of those conversations, yeah, okay, Iran funds some terrorist activities and some terrorist groups within that region. So does the US. So does Israel. Like, Israel literally funded Hamas at the beginning. And the reason why they did that was because they thought it was a good idea to have Hamas destabilize Palestine. That was the whole goal. That was 20 years ago that they were funding Hamas. So everyone has got their best, like their geopolitical interests in mind. We hear all the stories about how the Iranians don't want the Iranian regime in power anymore, and that they want to riot in the streets and they want regime change in Iran. Well, I will remind you that just prior to October 7, bless my wife, just prior
she's trying to derail you.
Yeah, I know. She's an
agent.
She's a Jewish agent. A Mossad. So just prior to October 7, there were protests in the streets of Israel wanting Benjamin Netanyahu removed.
Yeah.
Right? Because of apparently corruption charges and all of these other things. And the issue is like when the Ukraine-Russia war kicked off, what did Vladimir Zelensky do? Well, where I'm a wartime leader, he cancelled elections and banned the opposition parties. So he's actually gone well past his electoral mandate to lead. I think that was a year or two ago. They were supposed to hold another election. But because they're in a conflict, he gets to keep power. Benjamin Netanyahu, same thing. Now they're in a conflict, he gets to hold on to power. So the biggest issue that I have out of all of these situations is there will be a blood price paid by the people who have nothing to do with starting or any benefit to gain out of these conflicts. And all of the, like we said it last week on the show, the justifications for all of these activities, we all know they're bullshit, because as soon as you apply the most minute amount of scrutiny to these decisions that are made, they just fall off on them. They have no merits, right?
Yeah.
So we know what the game is. We know that a lot of these leaders are literally doing this out of personal gain and personal preservation. But the people pay the price. And that's what is disgusting about all of this stuff. It's always the people pay. It's never the leaders. They don't send their kids to war. Apart from the fact that a lot of high-ranking Iranian security force personnel, they've been taken out by these precision strikes by Israel. So, okay, maybe some leadership paid a price for it, but at the end of the day, if Israel's got a problem with that 7-year-old girl who died in a hospital, well, I mean, diplomacy is the only option.
But so this is the thing that gets me amped up is we know who's got the power.
Yeah.
And yet we do everything that they say, knowing full well that they're going to do the opposite of what we want.
Of course.
And we're supposed to be in charge.
And I'm telling you right now, I don't believe for a second that Iran ever wanted a nuclear weapon. But they do now. Because the only countries that feel comfortable attacking other nations have nukes.
Yeah.
Israel's got nukes, the US has nukes, Iran does not have nukes. But if I was Iran, I would be producing nukes as quickly as I possibly can.
I'll give you an example. Everyone hates North Korea.
Yep.
But we don't drop any bombs in North Korea.
Nope.
Why is that?
Trump calls him his friend. Because they've got nukes. Yeah. That's right. Look what happened to Muammar Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Gaddafi denuclearized. Got rid of their weapons program. What happened to him?
Yep. He got sodomized in the streets.
Yeah, that's a real good way to go out, isn't it? So that's the thing, and unfortunately, so there's so much propaganda that's swirling around. It is really difficult to keep a level head when it comes to these things, because you will see a lot of the stuff online about, the Iranians chanting death to America in the streets. I don't think that's a good thing, right? I don't think that any country chanting death to another country is a good thing.
Yeah.
However, just because one country chants it in the streets doesn't mean another country gets to go and murder those same people in the streets.
Yeah, of course.
Because they feel threatened.
Yeah.
It's
like the concept too of preemptive strike. I don't know if
totally.
I think we spoke about it
we spoke about last week.
On the show?
Oh, actually, no. Yeah, no, we did.
Yeah.
We did.
That a strike, a first strike, there's no such thing as a first strike.
That's right.
It's I just went and punched a guy on the street. That's a strike. No.
No, it was
preemptive strike.
He was about to attack me. I got him first.
Yeah, so just even the way that they play just the word games with us to try and get it to be justifiable is just outrageous.
And that's the benefit for us of being salespeople at heart, is we understand the power of wordplay. We literally have a saying in sales, which is, every word is a weapon and it will either be used for you or against you.
Yeah.
And that's what you're experiencing in this information/propaganda space. And I'm telling you, it's coming from every side. It's coming from the pro-Israel lobby. It's coming from the pro-US lobby. It's coming from the pro-Iran lobby. It's coming from everywhere, which is why it is so difficult for so many people to keep a level head and stay rational. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, the only people who've been consistent through all of this stuff are the people who were anti-war 2 years ago and are still anti-war now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of people that I, online commentators and everything, a lot of people that I agree with on a lot of things, like Konstantin Kissin's probably the best example of it that I can think off the top of my head. I love him. I love his show, Trigonometry. I listen to it all the time. I think his worldview and analysis is honest. I think he's very similar to us in that he typically tries to cut through the emotional BS and just find the truth of any particular matter.
Yeah.
And he's consistent on that. And then as soon as this conflict is kicked off and it involves Israel, he's flipped on a dime. And worse still, it's not like he has just flipped and taken a different side to this conflict than he typically would, but he has been aggressively going after people online over it. As literally like trying to shout people down who disagree with him when he's not normally like that.
Well, he did it with Ukraine and Russia as well. So he seems to be like a real warmonger.
Yeah. And yeah, it's...
Right, let's move on to your last...
Yeah, let's talk about this. So we mentioned on the show, because I also don't want all of this negative conflict to completely supersede us talking about the good things that are happening as well. And some of the things that... look, we both mentioned on the show last week, we were disappointed with Trump. We think Trump has mishandled this. We wanted, when Trump got elected, we wanted to do what he said he was going to do. We wanted the forever wars to stop. We wanted the Russia-Ukraine conflict to stop. We wanted Israel-Gaza to stop. We wanted all that stuff to stop, and none of that stuff has actually happened.
Yeah.
Whether he is actually trying to create peace in the Middle East or not is still up for debate, and we will not know right now what's going to happen, and I think that his legacy largely depends on it. So if you are like me and you do believe that he is an egotistical person who cares about the way he appears and his legacy, to me that's a good thing, because it means that hopefully he will actually come to the right decisions at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for. But there is some good news happening on the vaccine front out of the United States. So we covered recently on the show how Bobby Kennedy just fired all the members of the ACIP board and replaced them with a new team. Well, another key part of the vaccine story is the global vaccines group, GAVI. So for those of you, just to give you a bit of a reminder, let's go back to COVID and let's talk vaccines. All the countries in the West, in particular, took all of their guidance on the COVID vaccines from the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization who we've just signed on this new pandemic agreement to, who will literally hand all of our decision making over in an official capacity next time a pandemic happens, not an unofficial capacity like we just did. They were the unelected body that our government officials literally said, well, the experts, as in the WHO, they told us that we should do these things. Lockdowns, vaccine mandates, masking, etc. The key funders of the World Health Organization are as follows, and we've covered this on the show years ago, so the numbers may have slightly changed. But the number one funder is the US government. The number two funder is the German government, which I find quite interesting considering the fact that the pharmaceutical companies that make the majority of money out of vaccines, the majority of them are based in America and Germany. Yeah. Like, look at Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Pfizer's an American company. BioNTech is a German company.
Yeah.
The number three funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yep.
Number four, can't remember, but number five was GAVI, which is anyway, it's a vaccine advocacy group, essentially. Right.
That'd be fun at parties.
Now, GAVI is a public-private partnership, which is part funded by the US government, part funded by some private philanthropy, like from Bill Gates. So if you joined GAVI's contributions to the WHO together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they actually go up to number two.
Right.
Right? So this is why this stuff is so important, because you've got to remember, the US pulled its funding from the World Health Organization after Trump was inaugurated. So they pulled their funding to the WHO. And what did Australia's government do? We've just given them an extra $45 million a year. That's what we've committed to. Yeah, because we want to keep the money flowing towards them. But so again, we talk about incentives all the time on the show. The World Health Organization is essentially there to sell medical products, because that's where their funding comes from. It came from the people who directly benefit the most from pushing vaccines and medicines on people all over the world. US companies, German companies, and Bill Gates, essentially.
Yep.
All right, so let's look at this story. So the US pulls funding from global vaccines groups, saying it has ignored the science. This is from ABC News. You can scroll down a little bit. That'll be great. So from ABC News London, US Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the country is pulling its support from the Vaccines Alliance GAVI, saying the organisation has ignored the science and lost the public trust. A video of Kennedy's speech was shown to participants at a GAVI meeting in Brussels on Wednesday, where the vaccines group was hoping to raise at least $9 billion for the next 5 years.
Oh, is that all?
GAVI is a public-private partnership including the World Health Organization, UNICEF, the Gates Foundation, and the World Bank. It has paid for more than 1 billion children to be vaccinated through routine immunization programs, saving an estimated 18 million lives. Now, just so you're aware, this story was written everywhere. I deliberately chose a left-leaning news outlet, right? The United States has long been one of its biggest supporters. Before Donald Trump's re-election, the country had pledged $1 billion through 2030. Kennedy called on GAVI to re-earn the public trust and to justify the $8 billion America has provided in funding since 2001, saying officials must consider the best science available, even when that science contradicts established paradigms. Kennedy said that until that happens, the US won't contribute further to GAVI. Kennedy, a long-time vaccine skeptic, said he and President Trump were concerned about how GAVI and the World Health Organization partnered together during the COVID-19 pandemic to work with social media companies to, in quotes, silence dissenting views, to stifle free speech and legitimate questions during a time when many people had questions about vaccine safety. And just a note on that. So we got banned from YouTube during COVID. That's why we left YouTube in the first place. YouTube cites World Health Organization as their expert source when it comes to creating the policies around medical misinformation. So it is a clear conflict of interest. Kennedy said GAVI continues to make questionable recommendations, like advising pregnant women to get immunized against COVID-19 and funding the rollout of vaccine against diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis in poorer countries. World Health Organization and other health authorities have recommended pregnant women get vaccinated against COVID-19, saying they are at a higher risk of severe disease. Scroll down a bit. Kennedy said he has seen research that concluded that young girls vaccinated against diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis were more likely to die from all other causes than children who weren't immunized. Some observational studies have shown that vaccinated girls do have a higher death rate compared to unvaccinated children, but there is no evidence the deaths are caused by the vaccine.
I love that.
Love that, right?
Love that.
No evidence because we've never looked for it. And I just, at this moment, I want to go back to the thought that I said before about when these vaccines were released. So we are literally talking about injecting kids with technologies that were created 50 years ago and pretending that we couldn't do a better, safer job today. Makes no sense. GAVI said in a statement on Thursday that its utmost concern is the health and safety of children. The organisation said any decision it makes on vaccines to buy is done in accordance with recommendations issued by the World Health Organization's expert vaccine group.
I want to say, the highlight of using children is will someone please think of the children?
Totally. And again, it's the same sales pitch as Israel-Gaza. They're using kids.
Yes.
In quotes, this ensures GAVI investments are grounded in the best available science and public health priorities, it said. GAVI said scientists had reviewed all available data, including any studies that raised concerns, and that the diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis vaccine has played a key role in helping halve childhood mortality.
But even I know we spoke about it probably 2 weeks ago on the show. What? You don't have to be a doctor or a genius to realize that the American child vaccine program is way more comprehensive, and therefore every other country's got it wrong.
Correct. We've covered it on the show before. The childhood vaccine schedule in America is 84 vaccines. In Australia, it's 17. So is Australia's government anti-vax? And are we murdering our kids because we're not giving them an extra 60 vaccines?
Yeah, if you apply just the thinnest layer of logic onto
That's right.
this.
Which is the same for all the subjects that we talk about on this show.
Yeah.
The British government said Wednesday it would give £1.25 billion between 2026 and 2030 to GAVI. It said the money would help GAVI protect up to 500 million children in some of the world's poorest countries from diseases including meningitis, cholera and measles.
Cholera.
The Associated Press and Science Department received support from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute's Department of Science and Education and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. The AP is solely responsible for all content. So just for those of you who aren't aware, the Robert Wood Johnson, that is the Johnson from Johnson & Johnson Pharmaceuticals, just so you're aware. So I don't want this to fall to the wayside. I want this to be spoken about because you can criticize a lot of the things that Trump said that he would do that he hasn't done yet, but a lot of the things that the MAHA movement said they would do, they are working on full steam ahead. And as I said on one of the gay pirate, Peter Fitzsimmons' ex-posts the other day, imagine a world where all of your precious vaccines still exist, but they're actually safe and free of the side effects that the medical community currently pretends don't exist. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Why can't we have that?
Do you think a part of it though? Do you think deep down, even the most hardcore pro-vaccine person, the reason why they don't want this is because there is a shadow of doubt? Like there is
Probably.
a slight, like they believe that there is a slight chance that they might be wrong about their view, and therefore the best argument, the best position to take is just call you a cooker for even considering
It's
the
basic
idea.
human nature. We spoke about this last week with the Jew van hoax and the staffers that didn't show up for their hearings to give evidence. If they had nothing to hide, you'd show up, you'd give the evidence.
Yeah.
They clearly have something to hide. Actually, they're voluntarily appearing today because they did actually threaten to get arrested. So it'll be interesting to see what the updates that come out of that. But this, I think you're right, and I think that you have to think. Imagine if you were a doctor. So Sunil Dand, who is a doctor who I follow on social media, he's a great bloke. Woke up to himself during the pandemic, and he asked a question today, and it was like, why do you think that so many doctors still push a lot of the vaccines and all of these different things? And I've got empathy for the doctors. Like, this is the thing, like, the doctors aren't evil. In my opinion, the vast majority of doctors honestly believe they're doing the right thing, and they're just sticking by their training that they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to receive, and they honestly believe they're doing the best thing by their patients. It's not their fault that the education they received was based around what's most profitable for the pharmaceutical industry. They didn't write the training courses. And it's also not their fault that if they go outside those bounds, they'll lose their license to practice.
Yeah.
It is a systemic issue, not a personal doctor issue.
Yeah.
And we've seen what the medical licensing committees do to doctors that step outside the boundaries, like during COVID. A lot of them lost their licenses. A lot of them have been suspended indefinitely for 3 years. So they've still got bills. They can't practice. Like, they can't make any money. Just because they dared to question the government's narrative. And I just want to remind people, COVID's the most egregious example because the COVID vaccines were approved in Australia with no testing done in Australia at all. The TGA used, in quotes, the best available evidence to make an assessment on whether or not to approve the vaccines. The best available evidence just so happened to come directly from the vaccine companies themselves because they supplied their trial data, which, as we've discussed on the show, the way that the trials work in the United States, which is where the majority of this work gets done, is the sponsor of the trial is always the drug maker seeking to get the drug approved so it can sell the drug. Because these trials cost millions of dollars. You would not... It's the biggest block between getting things that are approved that are actually good for you and not. Because if you can't make money out of it, you don't pay for these trials to get done. But what happens is, in the United States, whoever pays for the trial owns the data.
Yeah.
So when they say, oh, but the data's been peer-reviewed. No, not all the data's been peer-reviewed. What's been peer-reviewed is what the company who seeks to get the medicine approved so they can profit from it packages up in the way that it appears to come across at meeting the endpoints for the trial, and then they send that information away to peer reviewers. And the peer reviewers can only review the information that they receive.
Yeah. Shit in, shit out.
That's right. So this is why, and one of the biggest evidence points for this is, statistically, 30% of medicines that are approved in the United States have their approvals withdrawn after 12 months.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're packaged in a way to get the approval through, but you only see the adverse events once real-world usage begins. And then some of these things get pulled on safety grounds. So our government, the TGA, not only approved these vaccines, not only recommended the vaccines for everyone, our government coercively controlled us into taking them. Not Alex and I. We didn't take them, because...
Yeah.
But, literally, as a population, we were coercively controlled into taking vaccines where the best available evidence was the vaccine company saying, trust me, bro, it's safe and effective. And if you didn't trust me, bro, you were an anti-vaxxer, and you should be shunned from society, and as Bob Carr famously said, you should be denied medical care.
Yeah, fuck Bob Carr. Pivoting quickly, you made mention of Chris Minns.
Oh, yep.
Can we play the rant?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've got that up here. Do you want to, while I bring it up, do you want to talk about what we're talking about?
Yeah, so this goes back to the exploding Jew van hoax, which is the best way that I can describe it, where people know what we're talking about. So the updates over the last week. So last week there was a committee that was brought forth by the Honourable John Ruddock, who is one of our favourite New South Wales libertarian politicians. He brought this inquiry forward because he is concerned that the hoax has been leveraged to pass the hate speech laws, which specifically benefit Jews in New South Wales, essentially, and they stifle people's ability to speak freely. There was an inquiry called. Now, due to technicalities in the law, Chris Minns and the other minister aren't actually subject to... they can't actually be brought before the inquiry because...
What a sweet deal.
Because the government obviously writes laws to pretty much, protect themselves, right?
Hold themselves above the law.
Yes. But their key staffers are not covered under those same laws. So those staffers were supposed to appear last Friday at the inquiry. They refused to appear, and they said that they have just cause not to appear. They just didn't say what the just cause was. It's gone through a process. So basically the leader of the inquiry had to get legal advice to then seek further counsel as to whether or not arrest warrants can be issued for the staffers who failed to appear. The arrests are specifically to be brought before the inquiry to give evidence. So since then, the legal advice said, yes, do it. They then had to get it signed off by a Supreme Court judge, which I believe they were in the process of doing that, and it was about to be approved when then the staffers, just out of the goodness of their hearts, decided they would appear voluntarily on Friday. So that should be today. But in the meantime, Chris Minns has been completely unhinged about this, and you're right, it's quite entertaining, so you should play the clip.
So, Mr. Speaker, the biggest challenges to reform in New South Wales are the Legislative Council. Right now, that chamber is in the process of unwinding much-needed reform to workers' compensation, torpedoing, Mr. Speaker, bail law changes in the state, as well as winding back vilification laws in New South Wales. And in addition to all of that, they're also setting up a star chamber to investigate hard-working public servants in this state. That's the truth.
That's fake news. There are no hard-working staff.
That's the truth. You don't like hearing it?
Members.
But that's the reality. And Mr. Speaker...
Is that a Nazi salute?
Yeah, I would call that a Nazi salute by the... Yeah, or, a Roman salute.
That's above parallel.
Yeah, that is definitely above parallel.
Member for North Shore, you're on a call.
It's always amazed me, Mr. Speaker, that members of the upper house earn the term
Member
honourable
for Badgerys
the
Creek,
day they're
you're on a
elected.
call.
But whether it's applied sarcastically depends on how they react in office, Mr. Speaker. And I want to speak to one of those honourable members, the Honourable Mark Latham, Mr. Speaker. Because he seems to be the one calling the shots. No doubt you'll come to his defence. No doubt you're going to come to his defence. But he seems to be the one calling the shots in the upper house. Let me remind the House of what this honourable member has done over the last 2 years. Mr. Speaker, it gets better. It gets better because not so long ago, a couple of months ago, I refer you to Mark Latham's odious Twitter account where he said, quote, two Jews on Sky News saying the fake anti-Semitism narrative must stop.
Yes. 2 minutes is granted.
Then he goes, Min's emboldened the Jewish lobby and now it's out of control. Mr. Speaker, of course, that old trope of bigots everywhere blaming a Jewish conspiracy. Blaming a Jewish conspiracy. And I have to say, I thought the person who summed it up...
It was literally a conspiracy. like we know, it's proven it's a conspiracy. So what you said is correct. It is a conspiracy. And did you use it to push through Jewish specific laws? Yeah, it is a Jewish conspiracy.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody as well that when the AFP and the New South Wales Police came out and said, we believe it was a fake terrorist plot, no one's been arrested.
Yeah.
Just so you're aware.
Yeah, they said it was organised crime.
Yeah.
Trying to get a particular agenda.
Who organised it? Why isn't anyone in jail?
Probably people who got something out of this, which is the lawmakers.
Best, Mr. Speaker, was the member for Vaucluse, who gave a brilliant contribution in the Upper House inquiry where she said the term hoax felt like an affront because for our community, it was very real. Firebombings of synagogues, of people's homes, that was real. There was nothing that was a hoax or fake about it. So I appreciate what people...
Except the van, the note, the bombs.
Yeah, can we also just, again, remind people of the fact that one of those synagogues that got firebombed, our government paid $35 million of our tax dollars to rebuild it because they were underinsured?
Yeah, man.
Does that happen to any of us? So any of you guys that have had either houses damaged in bushfires or, maybe the Lismore floods, did any of you guys get $35 million from the government to rebuild because you were underinsured?
Have meant with the term hoax, but for us, it's a very painful slap in the face. A brilliant contribution from the member for Vaucluse.
Brilliant.
Now, Mr. Speaker, it may not shock people in the gallery or this parliament that one of Australia's biggest bigots doesn't like hate speech laws. But that doesn't mean they're not justified. And I want to correct the record for members in the gallery and in the public. There were 14 incidents involved of anti-Semitism related to the Dural Caravan inquiry. There were 367 anti-Semitism attacks in New South Wales over the last 2 years. 367. Blithely...
Didn't you say 77 before?
I don't know, but how many have happened in the last few months since these laws came in?
Yeah.
Zero?
Ignored by the
Did the Nazis decide to take their time off?
Now I'm reminded of that old adage, Mr. Speaker, never wrestle with a pig, because you both get dirty and besides, the pig loves it. But I have to say to you, Mr. Speaker, at some point, members of this Parliament and the other House have to stand against this bigotry. And there is a coalition emerging of Greens in the Upper House, the Coalition and One Nation voting together day after day after day to platform one of the most shameful bigots in New South Wales.
Isn't calling someone a bigot a hateful thing?
Oh.
Like, isn't that hate speech? Because he says bigots as a derogatory term. So couldn't you argue, now he's a minister so he can't get paid for it, but if someone calls you a bigot, isn't that hate? Hate speech?
Well, there's key context around all of these things. Was the accused bigot Jewish or not?
Yeah.
And now, just for our listeners at home, I just want to reiterate, we aren't anti-Jew or anything like that.
Jason, I don't like you even having to say that. It's ridiculous to have to defend that position all the time. And
true.
You have to do it every time.
That is true.
I think it's bullshit. That plays into it. We don't need to do that. We can clearly say, stick by what our words are.
Yeah.
Don't go to defence. We don't need it.
Well, I was going to flesh it out a little bit more, just because we always talked about, during the pandemic, for example, as another example of it, the chilling effect that censorship laws have on social discourse. It is totally right for people to critique Benjamin Netanyahu's activities in Palestine. To be able to censor or chill that like valid political speech under threat of prosecution under anti-Semitism laws, it removes the ability to have a functional democracy. This is why freedom of speech is so important. It is the bedrock of democracy. This is why the United States is the greatest country on earth. Because the First Amendment...
They have something no one else has.
They've got freedom of speech. And they've got the Second Amendment to protect the first one.
Yeah.
That's what it all comes down to. Like, they don't get it right every single time. But if you look at what has happened in that country over a long period of time, they're doing extremely well. And the reality is, I believe every member of our society has something positive that they can contribute towards our society to make it a better place. Whether it's new ideas, changes of the ways that we do things, how to progress, all of that sort of stuff. And whenever you bring laws in which seek to stifle your ability to speak freely about any subject, all that will do, it will be used as a cudgel to beat you down so that you can no longer criticize things or voice opinions about things which really do actually matter. That's the point.
Yeah, totally.
And the fact that they can use false flag events as a justification to ram these laws through and then accuse you of anti-Semitism when you want to go, hey, if the whole thing was based on a hoax, number one, who did it and why aren't they arrested? And number two, maybe we don't actually have this problem because it was fake. Let's roll it back.
Yeah.
And he knows...
And then if that one was fake, those other ones that he cited, how many of those are fake?
Well, that's the thing. That's why he knows the number. Because they had it on the whiteboard back at the office. Where they're ticking them off as they went.
Mate, I've done 250 anti-Semitic attacks today, mate.
Yeah.
Come on, mate.
And you got to remember, they came thick and fast over those couple of months just before that legislation tried to get rammed through. We've had nothing ever since. So we know it was false flags. We know it was bullshit. Because otherwise, guess what? If you have real Nazis in this country who really want to harm Jewish people, do you think a couple of laws are going to stop their activities if they're firebombing synagogues?
Do you know what?
Really?
I was going to synagogue until I realised that there was laws against firebombing a synagogue.
Well, that's the thing. They didn't even bring laws in against firebombing synagogues. They brought in speech laws.
Yeah.
Right? So again, just apply some critical thinking to it. If you have a Nazi group in Australia who hates Jews so much that they were going to firebomb synagogues, why have they stopped? Because it ain't the hate speech laws. It was already illegal to do those things.
Yeah.
Because it was a false flag for a narrative. And a big part of me wonders, because a lot of the discussion coming out of America is centered around the fact that this plan to bomb Iran has actually been in the works for months between US and Israel.
And Tom Cruise.
And Tom Cruise specifically. And a lot of... Part of me wonders, us in the West, did we deliberately false flag to put these laws in place so that Julie Inman Grant can then go, any criticism of Israel online is anti-Semitism, so then she can go to all the social media platforms and get all those posts removed. So you literally prime your social media ecosystem to be controlled narrative when the US and Israel pull their attacks on Iran.
Totally. I can totally see that.
You heard it here first, ladies and gents. We should call the show the VK Bros. The 5 years in the future now.
Yeah.
Because that's when all
and
stuff
30 years in the past now as well.
Yeah. Thanks to the X-Files.
Not just that, even the Iran stuff. Everyone's seeing all the old clips.
Do you see that meme that I posted the other day? And it's like, it's up to you to stop generational trauma. And it's got like the old man pointing at his son going, "You're going to Iraq." And then the son's pointing at his son going, "You're going to Iraq." And then it's got the next person, they're holding the shield up. And then they're saying to their baby, "You're going to Iran."
And on that note...
Yep, let's leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us, guys. We will see y'all next week.
See ya.